You're listening to Let's Talk AI.
Welcome to Let's Talk AI. I'm Harold Godwin, Managing Director for Waterloo AI. I'll be your host. Today's guest is Angelique Mohring. Angelique is the CEO and founder of GainX. Thanks for being here today, Angelique.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Harold.
Oh, this is great. So we're really excited. Everyone is chasing how do we bring AI to organizations? What is it? Where do we start? Where do we get the data? All these questions in pretty much every organization, small, medium, and large. And hopefully today's conversation, you'll shed some light on that. But before we launch into that, tell us a little bit about Angelique and the founding of GainX and how long you've been at this, and then we'll get into what you're doing now.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this topic, by the way. I think it is very pertinent, especially given all the shifts in technology in the market that we're seeing. Right. So who's Angelique? As you said, I'm the CEO and the founder of GainX. But before GainX, I had about just over 15 years of experience in technology. So that's now over 25 years. Gets crazy when you start adding up those numbers. I'm going to go back, though, a little bit further than that because it becomes very relevant for the kind of technology that GainX brings to market and brings to our clients. So my first degree was in business, and I was going to become a lawyer and go into law to work on some cool Canadian law. And in the same week, I got invited to go on a dig in Peru because I was taking anthropology. And so, long story short, I became an anthropologist and bioarchaeologist. I'm a published anthropologist, and I worked primarily in Canada, California, and Peru. It was a phenomenal part of my life. But for reasons I'll explain over a beer sometime, I left that career path and decided to go into consulting, which quickly brought me towards technology. And technology, I mean, it's kept me ever since because it's such a fast-paced, changing market that, the moment you get your thumb on something, it's squiggled out from under it and morphed into something else. So that's why I decided to build GainX, because managing that change is challenging, it's complex, and I just wanted to bring it to here.
So when you first started GainX, what was the value proposition? What was the big why, the way you went forward with that?
Oftentimes when you're a founder, you build businesses that come out of your own experiences. And between the consulting and being an executive myself, I realized that at the top of the house inside large organizations, it was getting increasingly more difficult to actually know what's happening inside of the organization versus what people are either reporting or perceive is happening. And this is where anthropology and technology just became just this great combination, because anthropology is the study of human behavior and can tell you what's actually happening. So as an executive, I could so often smell the smoke, but it took some time and a great deal of effort and resources to find the fire sometimes, because people naturally wanted to be optimistic about how they could manage risk. And so they'd hold it close to their chest. So I wanted to solve that problem to give executives visibility across multi-country, multi-business unit, multifunctional businesses in the world.
Okay, so you mentioned you started 25 years ago. So fast forward to now. We look at about I call it the tsunami of AI, and that it really kicked off, even accelerated once the whole GPT hit the market back in November of 22. More and more organizations and execs going, what do I do? How do I even know what I got, where I'm going? So tell us the story now of where GainX is at and what do you actually do? How do you help organizations?
So GainX is 12 years old. I've got a business in Canada and another one in the UK. So we've been in the AI market for a while now. We've got proven AI in the market in some of the world's biggest companies. What do we do? I think I'm going to keep it to where we are today, just for the sake of time and perhaps interest. But if you are a leader today and you are trying to think about where is the best place in my organization to apply AI, that's early stage, or what's the best way to expand the competencies that we currently have in AI and what could that look like? Or how can we build or implement and adopt AI in a really competitive way? So they're asking all of these kinds of questions. And again, it comes to that visibility. The way that GainX functions is that it ingests data that clients already have. So it will look at how information flows inside of an organization. Typically, that's some kind of communications data, whether it's connection scores, emails, chats. There's lots of different options that we can do there. And our software, our artificial intelligence will build the network within that organization. And then it starts to overlay other data. So what's the work that people are doing? How do they communicate? How does information flow between people to people, people to systems, systems to systems? And out of that, it will also identify patterns that will impact your ability to adopt AI, to scale AI, to maintain the capacity for change or strategic alignment. So GainX will quantify what has typically been soft metrics and bring it into a lens that includes a quantification of risk, a quantification of costs, the impact on time to ROI, and that goes on. Some of those patterns, we can go into these in more details if you want, but it could include changes in productivity, changes in strategic alignment, high degrees of systemic distraction that impact your ability to deliver or are creating duplicate work. So for one bank, for example, we found 31 million in duplicate work within days of ingesting the data. That's a pretty quick win.
Wow. So, I'm just hearing as you describe this, a lot of people think about data as spreadsheets and numbers, and you've just taken that next step forward and say, no, data is just the everyday communication, interaction, and emails, because ultimately that is the flow within organizations. So, and because a lot of that is a shift in mindset as well, because most organizations say, well, I don't think we have enough data. But it sounds like regardless who they are, they've got that basic transfer of knowledge and communication data, which is their organizational operational things.
Correct. Everybody has the communications data, and I'm thrilled that you recognized that, because it is often a response we get. Our data is not mature enough, or we haven't got a data lake yet, or whatever those conceptions might be that they need for AI to work. So we've really positioned our AI to help organizations transform, whether it's digital transformation, whether they're doing an M&A, whether they've got a huge portfolio of strategic projects. So I'll give you one more example. I had talked about that systemic level of distraction. In a private equity owned company, GainX had predicted that within the next reporting cycle, 71% of all of active projects were going to delay because of what it was seeing systemically. That included what we call clay layers, which is me just having fun with being an archaeologist, and it's kind of intuitive. But clay layers are people who don't get information they need to do their jobs effectively day to day. Could be a million reasons for it: fatigue, change fatigue, lifers, you just smashed two business units together, and so on. So anyway, the software predicted 71% of projects would delay, primarily due to a clay layer, systemic clay layer, and significant distraction clusters impacting three business units. They didn't believe us because they felt they were pretty expert at managing projects. So they said, well, let's wait out the next reporting cycle. And by that reporting cycle, 67% had already delayed. So that was hundreds upon hundreds of person days lost that were now irrecoverable, that could have been prevented, because GainX can see below human eye level how that information is creating behaviors and how the behaviors are creating costly inefficiencies in your organization.
So if I'm the CEO of a company and I hear you use a broad I won't say vague, but a term like systemic levels of distraction. And I say, okay, like what? Give us some examples.
Great question. So GainX is really good at doing both a systemic analysis and what we call a specific analysis. So a specific analysis can include in your London business office, you've got 30 million of duplicate work here, here, and here. And it gives degrees of what that duplicity is. It tells you how many resources you could potentially consolidate. And it gives you root causes to why you likely have it. Very specifically focused. Here it is. Systemic is you have something happening in the organization that's creating a high degree of distraction. It could be echo chambers. You've got groupthink in the organization. So you've got multiple teams. Now we're getting into specifics. Here, here, and here that are stuck in an echo chamber. Very natural when there's a high degree of distraction. It means they will not consume more external information. It's very difficult to get them to consume more. And they echo their own beliefs off of each other to continue to validate those. When that happens, you can forget about rolling out any new AI initiative. It's not going to happen. They're not going to adopt it. It's not going to scale, and it's probably going to cost you millions in losses. So we've gone from distraction clusters where it can show, this area of the organization, let's say, has 40% of your projects in a distraction cluster. This area of the organization has, 5 other echo chambers, all impacting these projects, creating this much in loss. So you go from systemic challenges, why do you have so much distraction, to specific outcomes. It's costing you X million and hundreds of person days in your delivery cycles.
Okay, so just to put our head around this further, systemic can be both internal and external. The distraction doesn't. So, can you give us an example of an external systemic distraction?
Yeah, so the software can actually measure the degree of distraction and tell you what's happening with the people that are getting distracted. I'll give you 2 examples. You've got one team, let's say it's the baseline, right? They deliver on time, they're healthy, their communications are healthy, they're not isolated, and so on. You've got another team that sits in a distraction cluster. What it can show is, and this is a real example, is that team, which should be the same, like they're in the same departments, they're doing the same kinds of things, was spending 25% more of its time on external communications, part one. Then, when it took those communications internally into that department and team, it chomped on them and bounced them back and forth 50% more often than the healthy team. So there's a lot happening there. We are able to show it's a top-down leadership challenge. So there's too many changes coming too quickly, for example, at a part of the organization. They can't consume it all. They're highly distracted. Or there's too many competing priorities, right? They got too many customers that are asking for changes or complaining or, providing feedback. There's a number of different external factors that could be coming in that GainX is able to measure and to then compare against this is what good looks like.
So, no one likes to be told or highlighted that they're doing something wrong. How open-minded are executive teams when they get this kind of pointed, exacting feedback? Are they defensive? Are they open-minded, or mix of both?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a mix of both. I think with the world in the state that it's in right now, where we're really not quite sure where the economy is going to go or how long it's going to take to recover. We don't know where AI is really going to bring us. And, depending on the news headline of the day, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, or we're heading to the end of the world. So I think there's a lot of fear. I think there's a tremendous amount of change fatigue. I think people are still coming out of the other side of the pandemic. So it's quite natural. But this is where the anthropology can come in and help. There's a bunch of things that we did with our software. First of all, it's 100%. We are so transparent about what we do. We have white box AI, meaning we explain all of it. There's no hidden black box AI in it. Obviously built on a foundation of ethics because we're looking at human behavior and those insights can have a tremendous impact. So what we strive to do is to keep the insights at a group level. Some organizations will completely anonymize the groups, the projects that they're working on, everything, so that you still get the insights, right? 40% of the organization is in a clay layer, impacting productivity by 16%, right? Those kinds of insights. So that's for the ones that are afraid. For the ones that are embracing it, there's an attitude of, if we don't do this, our competitors will. And if GainX is going to give us the tools that we need to build a high performance organization based on data, and to not overwhelm our organization with too many strategies or too many changes, and to be able to actually hit the ROI target, which, depending who you ask, it's 70 to 90% of companies are still missing them. Then there's a huge appetite for it. So the first one requires a bit more education as to how we protect them, how we, we've built data ethics and GDPR and all those other requirements into it. And then when you have the ones that have that appetite, we can help them along the path as well, because it's not typically one executive that buys us. It's a group of them.
It brings me to the topic of fear. Fear being potentially in some groups that have been targeted as quote unquote inefficient, and the clay layer, as you call them, or things like that. Are these people cooperative during this process? Is there resistance? Are they fearing they're going to lose their job? How is it received, next level below executive types, if you want to call it, or just elaborate there.
Yeah. So initially, there's definitely an education process that we'll go through that. And we're always quite willing to go through this, particularly in larger organizations. GainX isn't out to try to help every organization, restructure 70% of their organization out. What it is out to do is, it's been a problem that I think executives have faced since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. And that's when you put a group of people together, you're naturally going to have different expectations, different behaviors, people hearing things differently. The CEO thinks that we should do this. My boss thinks that we should do that, and they don't align, and so on. That just comes with human behavior. So what GainX does is it shines a light or a lens into those parts of the organization that need additional love. So if you've got a high degree of distraction, that's really hard on your employees, because most employees that I've met over the years, and I've probably met a couple 100,000, want to do well and want to succeed. So if we can show you've got constraints and information flow creating clay layers and echo chambers, nobody wants to be in an echo chamber, right? That gives the executives the tools to be able to go in and help to facilitate a more efficient flow of information. It goes well beyond communications that can positively impact strategic alignment, productivity, output, all those great things. So, but that all comes with education. And that's when we start to wrap in, let's talk about artificial intelligence and anthropology. And usually everybody gets it. And then they're quite excited, because it means they've actually got a better chance to be successful in their job than in their current state in their company.
So from your efforts in doing this, have you identified sectors that are more open to receiving this kind of feedback, like target sectors, or is it pretty much all of them?
I'm just trying to think of some that might not be open to it. And we've got some pretty big global partners. We're partnered with PwC and KPMG and Genpact and EPAM and Microsoft, and they hit every vertical and industry there is. I would say we're industry agnostic. I think, if you've got a manufacturing firm with 5 people at the top of the house and every other person is on the line, we're probably not for you. There's other ways to be optimizing using AI. There are things that we could do very quickly, but it's more of that would be more of a short-term relationship, where, because we can continue to monitor changes and the organic nature of behavior inside of organization, it's a longer-term relationship. So yeah, I think it's pretty industry agnostic. I can't really think of companies that are saying, no, we don't want to adopt AI.
Okay. So the other thing I've seen is a lot of companies now that chat GPTs become the favorite phrase and LLMs. How do you deal with that? Oh no, we know how to fix it. We're going to throw LLM at it or chat GPT at it. How do you deal with that? What's that expression? You can't teach somebody anything if they already know it. So how do you get over that? Well, no, we got LLMs. We're going to fix it. Like how do you deal with that? They've already figured out what they think is the answer, but they don't even know the problem.
Oh, well, there you go. Right. I think you certainly just answered part of it. I think there's going to be so much power with regards to decision intelligence from LLMs. And we were using the phrase delivering executive decision intelligence long before it became cool in the market. I mean, personally, I love what LLMs are doing for insights and data. And what I'm finding is education is getting shorter because people are getting the value of having this, what the kinds of insights that they couldn't get to before. I think the important thing, though, to realize is when we talk about the decision intelligence that will surface for executives, it is built on 12 years of research and development and partners with university and testing, and it goes on. And it is a multi-scientific approach from organizational design, organizational psychology, anthropology, social network analysis, obviously machine learning. We've got a lot of science built into what we do. If you're just ingesting data that you can ask any question to, there's a lot of risk involved with what it could spit out. So my impression from medium to large organizations, they're not quite ready to adopt it. They're definitely working with it and testing it. But if you look down the future of what that risk could evolve to, I see them taking, the ones that we work with at least, taking good strides to make sure that their data and the decision intelligence that's surfaced is, I'm going to use the word, not just ethical, but risk free. You don't want somebody saying, who makes more money than me in the company, or why is Johnny taking so much time off, or whatever those there's so many questions that I'm sure you've already heard them all could be.
Well, maybe it's not risk free. Maybe it's risk intelligence. Like they're risk educated.
Risk intelligence, thank you, I like that. I'm going to borrow that phrase.
When you talk, but you did mention the key word in my mind is the future looking. So we're here. You've talked to us about where you're at. What does the future look like? Not necessarily for GainX, but for these organizations that want to try and roadmap this out, because I think that's on it. So many companies, you know, front and center, they're trying to figure this out.
I think about that one a lot, and we've got a particular campaign ongoing right now on LinkedIn about how to adopt AI over 90 days, what that would look like, and that's a frequent question. There's so much, standing on top of your soapbox, screaming at the top of your lungs, kind of people out there saying that if you don't adopt, you're going to be obsolete. If I'm honest, I think there's some truth to it. I think that the delivery mechanism of that message could perhaps be different. But if we look at how we've seen different periods of industrial evolution, technology evolution over the last 2 centuries, every time there's been a massive disruptor in market, one of three things has happened every time. And we are now in a massive disruptive, right? Either you ignore it and you went obsolete, or you adopted it, but you only adopted it in the minimalist way, maybe a chat box for your customer support. That's a good start, by the way. Just don't stop there. But even though most of those companies went obsolete, the ones that adopted it and continued to innovate then went on to become global leaders, Fortune 500s repeatedly. So I'm not saying that if you don't adopt Gen AI and AI right now, you will go obsolete. But I will say it will be very difficult to remain competitive. And I know that we're in a short week, most companies, because we deal primarily with medium to large companies, tend to manage their strategy quarter to quarter. And I think that you have to have a longer term view when looking at Gen AI and AI. You've got to stretch that AI roadmap back out to 3 to 5 years. And what does it look for you 10 years down the road from now? Even though we all know it's organic and going to change a million times, it allows you to be much more agile and nimble if you've at least got the tools in place, the analytics, the decision intelligence to navigate the changes as they're coming versus, getting a baseball the side of the head, ducking, all that. Like that it just doesn't work if you're trying to duck the changes all the time. That's the anthropologist.
Okay, well, I like that. I'm gonna wrap us up there. I like that outlook for the future is to move to a 3 to 5 year strategy instead of quarterly, and manage that not just on the business but the AI and how it affects that. And
I think I would add to that, Harold, that pilot, 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 and when it's good, scale. Like pilot, 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 and when it's good, scale it and go to the next one and the next one. If you're not sure where to start small and then run with it when it's good.
okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you for your insights and helping us to get some scope around road mapping AI for organizations.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks so much, Harold, for having me today.
Thank you.